Do you know the feeling of getting a gilded six-figure wedding invitation held at your own house? The $10 million house my ex-husband stole? He is inviting me to his wedding with his mistress. Right there. My mom, never one to back down, just sipped her tea and said, "Go. There will be a show. My name is Eliza Hayes. I am 32 years old, and I am a forensic accountant. My job is to find the truth buried in numbers, to follow the money people try to hide. Usually. I am very good at it, but I live in this rented beige apartment in downtown Denver, Colorado, a place whose only view is a neighboring brick wall because I failed to stop the biggest fraud of my life. The mail came today. Jammed between a credit card offer and a utility bill was an envelope so thick it felt like a slab. It was creamy, heavy cardstock, the kind that costs a fortune. When I tore it open, the smell hit me first, not perfume, but the sharp, metallic scent of expensive ink and pure, unadulterated audacity. The invitation inside was embossed with gold leaf, heavy enough to be a weapon. The names were printed in a swirling, arrogant script that I knew all too well: Julian Vance and Serafina Croft, my ex-husband, and his mistress, who was clearly getting a promotion. I should have thrown it in the incinerator. I should have shredded it. But my eyes scanned down, drawn by a horrifying magnetism past the date and the black-tie dress code, landing on the one detail that made my stomach clench: the location. The Vance estate. 1420 Golden Fields, Cherry Creek. My fingers went numb. The card dropping onto my cheap laminate countertop. The Vance estate. That was the sickeningly pretentious name he had invented for it. That address. That was not his estate. It was my house. It was the $10 million historic mansion my grandmother had left me. The house I grew up in. The house with the oak floors I had sworn I would refinish myself. The house Julian had systematically stolen from me. The memory plays back in high definition, whether I want it to or not. My grandmother passing 2 years ago. Julian, my charming, handsome husband, the brilliant real estate attorney, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Don't you worry about the estate, darling," he had whispered. "It's complicated probate. Let me handle the paperwork. I will protect you." I, blind with grief and suffocating trust, let him. During our chaotic divorce 1 year ago, I finally saw the protection he had offered. I discovered the intricate maze he had built, a series of forged power of attorney documents, a labyrinth of shell companies registered in Delaware. He had used his legal expertise not to manage my inheritance, but to transfer the deed, piece by piece, into an entity that he alone controlled. He left me with nothing but my clothes and a mountain of legal bills. Of course, I sued. I am a forensic accountant. I follow the paper. But Julian was smarter. He had buried the trail so deep, covered his tracks with such professional precision that no judge could find the thread. I lost. He kept the house, my house, and I got this shoebox apartment that always smells faintly of my neighbor's cooking, and Serafina, his mousy little paralegal. She was the final nail in my legal coffin. Serafina Croft, who sat on the witness stand and testified under oath that she had personally witnessed me sign the transfer documents, that I had been happy to do it. She lied so calmly, so beautifully, that she destroyed what little credibility I had left. And now, she was getting her reward, my house and my ex-husband. My fingers tightened on the invitation, the sharp, gilded edge digging into my palm. I wanted to tear it into 1,000 pieces. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over the garbage icon on the screen, but I dialed my mother instead. Eleanor Hayes answered on the second ring. She is a practical, tough woman who believes crying is a waste of hydration. "He invited me to the wedding," I said, my voice dangerously flat. "Who? Julian. He's marrying Serafina. At the house." A long, heavy silence stretched over the line. Then, "Are you going to cry about it? Or are you going to get even?" "I'm going to tear this invitation into confetti," I spat. Do not tear it, Eleanor commanded, her voice suddenly sharp as steel. You will RSVP, yes. You will find the most spectacular dress you can afford, and you are going to go to that wedding and take back what belongs to you. I paused, the anger momentarily deflating. Mom, I lost in court. It's over. He won. It is not over, she said. Men like Julian are arrogant. He is not inviting you to be polite. He is inviting you because he wants to gloat. He needs to see you broken. So you go, Eliza, and there will be a show. We hung up. I looked at the invitation again. The heavy paper, the arrogant script. My mother was right. I make my living finding the truth hidden in spreadsheets, in offshore accounts, in fabricated invoices. I find the patterns people think no one will see. Julian and Serafina thought they had committed the perfect crime. This was not an invitation. It was an opportunity. The adrenaline didn't hit until I hung up the phone. It was cold, sharp, and focused. The grief and rage that had clouded my judgment for the past year evaporated, replaced by the familiar sterile hum of a hunt. I went to the back of my closet and pulled out the 4 heavy banker's boxes labeled Vance v. Hayes, my cold case. I cleared my small dining table, stacking the boxes, and opened the first one. The smell of old paper and legal defeat filled the air. I pulled out the wedding invitation, the one that smelled like audacity, and used a piece of packing tape to fix it to the wall above my monitor. The gold leaf gleamed under my desk lamp. Target, I said aloud. The apartment around me disappeared. The beige walls, the traffic noise from the street below, my own reflection in the dark screen, it all dissolved. There was only me, the glow of the monitor, and the data. I am a forensic accountant. I failed to save my own house because I was looking for the wrong thing. I had spent months, and a fortune I did not have, trying to prove my signature was forged on the primary transfer documents. I was looking for a clumsy, obvious crime. But Julian was never clumsy. He was a legal artist, a virtuoso of the loophole. He would never have left a simple forgery for me to find. He was too smart for that. This time, I was not looking at Julian. I was looking at her. Serafina Croft. I opened a new encrypted file on my server and named it Project Nightingale. Serafina. The name felt like a mockery. I started with the basics. Her digital footprint was clean, almost sterile. Her social media was locked down tight, a recent change, but her professional profiles were still public. I traced her employment. She had been with Julian's firm for 2 years. Before that, she was a paralegal at a small boutique firm, Croft & Associates. It had specialized in estate planning. It had also, I discovered after another hour of digging, filed for bankruptcy 3 years ago under mysterious circumstances. Interesting, but not yet useful. I moved on to her financials. This was my world. I have ways of seeing the flow of money that most people do not. I ran her credit reports, accessed transaction histories, and looked for anomalies. For the first several hours, I found nothing. She lived in a modest apartment, drove a sensible car, and paid her student loans on time. Her bank account showed a steady, unremarkable salary from Julian's firm. It was the perfect picture of a boring, law-abiding paralegal. But people who are hiding something always make one mistake. They get clever. They try to disguise the money, not by hiding it, but by making it look legitimate. I stopped looking at Serafina's accounts and started looking at her family's. Her father was not a factor, but her mother, Maria Croft, was. Maria lived in a different state and received disability benefits. Her accounts were mostly dormant, except for one thing. There it was. A monthly incoming wire transfer, $5,000, on the 15th of every month for the last 18 months. The transfers had started exactly 2 months before my divorce proceedings began. The memo line on every single wire was the same, consulting services. My heart didn't race. It became a cold, steady metronome, $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year, a substantial sum for a woman on disability. The money was being funneled, not to Serafina, but around her. a classic laundering technique to avoid setting off red flags on her own accounts. I traced the origin of the wire. It came from a corporate account held at a bank in Wyoming. The name of the account holder was a shell company. The name was Aurelius Holdings. A cold shock, sharp as an ice pick, ran up my spine. I knew that name. I knew it intimately. I spun in my chair and pulled the final judgment from my divorce, the document that had legally stolen my life from me. Aurelius Holdings was the entity that had purchased my $10 million home from Julian in a complex, multi-layered transaction that the court had deemed legally sound. It was the final link in the chain, the ghost that now held the deed. Serafina was not just the mistress who had lied on the stand to protect her lover. She was not just a romantic entanglement. She was a paid co-conspirator. Julian had been paying her, through her mother, long before the divorce was even filed. I leaned back, the truth slotting into place with a sickening, perfect click. Julian, as a lawyer, could not directly manipulate the sale of my house to himself without it looking like a massive conflict of interest, but he could have his paralegal do it. He had used her, paid her off through her mother, to act as his proxy, to execute the very legal maneuvers he could not. The invitation on my wall seemed to mock me. Serafina was not just marrying the boss. She was cashing in, collecting her final bonus. No, I whispered to the empty room. This is not a bonus. This is a loose thread. And I was going to pull it until everything unraveled. Aurelius Holdings was a ghost. I spent 12 hours chasing it through a digital maze. It was a legal matryoshka doll, registered in Delaware. Its ownership was nested inside a blind trust in Nevada, which was in turn owned by another entity in the Cayman Islands. It was a fortress of legal code designed by Julian to be impenetrable. I was hitting a brick wall, and he knew I would. Frustration was a luxury I could not afford. I leaned back, my eyes burning from the screen. "You are looking in the wrong place," I said to my empty apartment. I was trying to attack the king, but in chess, you win by capturing the pawns, the bishops, the rooks. You dismantle the support system. I closed the file on Aurelius and opened the original property transfer documents, the ones Serafina had sworn she saw me sign. My eyes skipped over the legal jargon, the signatures I knew were useless, and landed on the bottom of the last page, the notary stamp. The weakest link in any fraudulent chain is not the person who benefits. It is the person who is paid to look the other way. His name was Marcus Reed, a public notary, a small-time operator who ran a side business out of a mail annex. I had dismissed him a year ago as an irrelevant functionary. Now, he was my entire focus. It took me less than 20 minutes to find him. Or rather, to find where he was. Marcus Reed had not renewed his notary license this year. A quick search of public records and social media showed he had retired. He and his wife, Brenda, sold their modest house in Aurora and moved to Costa Rica 6 months ago. The photos on his public Facebook page were a nauseating parade of sunsets, fruity drinks, and smug captions about living the dream. 6 months ago. That was 1 week after my divorce was finalized. The timing was not just a coincidence, it was a confession. I dove into his financials. I expected to find a large lump sum payment from Julian or one of his known accounts, but there was nothing. For hours. I cross-referenced his bank records, his wife's, their joint accounts. I found the proceeds from their house sale. I found his 401k withdrawal. It was all clean. Julian was too smart to pay the notary directly. He would know I, or any investigator, would look for that. I was missing something. He paid him. He had to have. How I expanded my search. If you cannot find a payment, you look for a service. You look for a gift. You look for a new, inexplicable source of income. I went through Brenda Reed's accounts again. She had no job. She was a homemaker. And yet, there it was. It was not a lump sum. It was a contract. A monthly payment of $12,500 for 1 year, the total $150,000. The payments had started the month before their move to Costa Rica. The payer was not Julian. It was a corporation I had never heard of, Apex Strategic Solutions. The memo line was for a consulting non-compete agreement. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the name, Apex Strategic Solutions, and the world tilted. This was not a random shell company. This was not one of Julian's creations. It was mine. Apex Strategic Solutions was the name of the boutique consulting firm where I had been a senior partner. It was the job I had loved, the career I had built for myself before I met Julian. It was the job I had quit, at his urging, to help him build his own law practice, to be his support system. I knew the CEO. I had hired the CFO. They were my friends, my old colleagues. With trembling fingers, I dialed my old boss. He answered, his voice full of warmth, asking where I had been. I cut right to it. David, I need a favor. I am looking at a contract from Apex, paid to a woman named Brenda Reed, for a non-compete. He was silent for a moment. Eliza, what is this about? That name sounds familiar. Let me check. Oh, yes. That was a strange one. Your husband called me about it last year. Julian, I closed my eyes. Wow, what did he say? He said he was representing a client who was acquiring a company that Brenda Reed had consulted for, and they needed a third party to manage the non-compete payout. He said he was coming to me as a personal favor, to give Apex the business. It was easy money. We just acted as the pay-through. We took a small fee and wired the rest to her. Julian handled all the paperwork. The phone felt heavy in my hand. He did not just steal my house. He did not just bribe a witness. He had used my name. He had used my reputation, my relationships, and my own professional past as the very mechanism to hide the bribe. He had weaponized my old life against me, turning my own friends into unwitting accomplices in his crime. I thanked David and hung up before he could ask any more questions. I looked at the document spread across my table, the payment to Brenda Reed, the fake contract, the wiring instructions from Julian's office, the notary stamp from her husband. This was it. This was the crack in the foundation. This was the first concrete, provable piece of evidence that tied Julian not just to an unethical trick, but to a federal crime. This was bribery. This was wire fraud. The cold case was not cold anymore. It was burning hot. I had the bribery charge. I had the wire fraud. It was a solid, prosecutable case against Julian and the notary. I could go to the FBI right now and blow the lid off the whole thing, but I hesitated. My forensic sixth sense was screaming that I was still missing a piece of the puzzle. Going to the police would blow up Julian, but it might not get me my house back. If Aurelius Holdings was locked in a legal battle, it could be tied up in court for years, and it did not explain Serafina. The $5,000 a month payments were a payoff. Yes, but it felt too small. She helped him steal a $10 million house and destroy my life. She was only getting $60,000 a year for it. It did not add up. The risk was too high for the reward. I needed an ally. I needed leverage. And I needed to understand the enemy. My real enemy. I went back to that bankrupt law firm. Croft and Associates. I had put it aside, but now it felt important. I began to dissect the case file of its collapse. It was not a simple bankruptcy. It was a detonation. The firm had been accused of gross mismanagement of client trust funds. Someone had been stealing, and the firm had collapsed under the weight of the lawsuits and the disbarment of its principal owner. The owner's name, Lawrence Croft. My fingers flew across the keyboard. It was not a coincidence. Lawrence Croft was Serafina's father. She had worked at his firm as a college intern, right before it imploded. I kept digging, pulling the old court dockets from the disbarment case. I read through the depositions, the auditor's reports. Lawrence had been a sloppy, desperate man, robbing Peter to pay Paul. But someone had to have noticed. Someone had to have filed the complaint that brought the whole house of cards down. I searched the list of opposing counsel, the witnesses, the complainants, and there, on page 27 of an auditor's affidavit, I found him, the concerned junior associate at a rival firm who had first discovered an alarming irregularity in a trust transfer and reported it to the state bar. The associate's name was Julian Vance. The room went cold. This was not a twist. This was a violation of all logic. Julian was the man who had systematically and publicly destroyed Serafina's father. He had been the catalyst for his disbarment, his financial ruin, his public humiliation, and now, Serafina was marrying him. Why would any woman, let alone a seemingly intelligent one, build a life with the very monster who had devoured her family, unless— The realization hit me like a physical blow. Serafina was not Julian's accomplice. She was his nemesis. This was not a partnership. It was a long con revenge plot. The $5,000 payments were not a bribe. They were an insult, a way for Julian to feel like he owned her, a mistake that proved his arrogance. She was playing the victim, the loyal paralegal, to get inside his defenses. She was using his own tactics against him. She was using him to get the one thing he had: my house, the money, the power. I had to be sure. I had to see the first victim. It took me a day to find Lawrence Croft. He was not in Costa Rica. He was in a low-income nursing home in Inglewood, one of those bleak cinder block buildings that smell of stale coffee and ammonia. I walked in, using a press pass I had from an old expert witness gig. I found him in a communal room, staring at a game show on a grainy television. He was a shell, a thin, frail man with watery, defeated eyes. I sat down across from him. Lawrence Croft. His eyes flickered to me, devoid of interest. My name is Eliza Hayes. I am here about Julian Vance. A spark of something fear lit his face. Get out. She is marrying him, you know, I said, my voice soft. Your daughter, Serafina. She is marrying Julian Vance. They are holding the wedding at my house, the house they stole from me. He flinched, a deep, shuddering movement. He turned to me, and the bitterness in his gaze was toxic. My daughter, he hissed, his voice a dry rattle. My daughter is a traitor. He leaned in, and the smell of sickness and rage was overwhelming. I lost everything. He took everything, and I told her. I said, he's a shark. He's a monster. And do you know what she said to me? I waited. You are a failure, she said. You were weak, and he beat you. I will not be weak. She said Julian was the future. She chose him. He sank back into his wheelchair, the brief fire gone, leaving only the ashes. She chose the winner. I stood up and walked out of that place of defeat, the final piece clicking into place. Serafina had chosen the winner. She had attached herself to the apex predator. Julian was her target, not her partner. He thought he was the puppet master, but she had her own strings wrapped around his heart, his trust, and apparently, his legal documents. I was not just fighting to get my house back from my thieving ex-husband. I was standing in the middle of a war between two far more venomous snakes, and they were both about to strike. The first thing I did when I got back to my apartment was open my laptop. I pulled up the wedding website from the invitation, clicked the RSVP link, and typed my name. Eliza Hayes. Party of one. Attending. The next step required a different kind of performance. I opened my email client and composed a new message to Serafina's personal address. I spent 20 minutes crafting the perfect tone of pathetic defeat, of a woman completely broken, with just a hint of desperate politeness. Serafina, I wrote, I am sure this is the last email you ever expected to receive from me. I wanted to write and congratulate you personally. When I received the invitation, my first instinct was anger, but that has passed. You won. Julian won. I have spent the last year fighting, and I am tired. I am just so tired of fighting. I truly just want to close this chapter of my life. I would like to attend the wedding, not to make trouble, but to genuinely wish you both well and find some peace for myself. As a gesture of goodwill, I have a wedding gift I would like to give you early. It is the large oil painting of my grandmother, the home's original matriarch. It was her specific wish in her will that the portrait must always remain in the main foyer, no matter who owned the house. I was fighting to keep it, but it belongs there, with you, as the new lady of the manor. Please let me know when would be a good time for a delivery. I hit send. The nausea of my own feigned sweetness was almost overwhelming. Seraphina's reply came in less than an hour. It was short, triumphant, and dripping with condescension. How very mature of you, Eliza. We would be happy to accept the portrait. It is, after all, part of the estate's history. You can have it delivered on Friday. She was arrogant. She was so blinded by her victory that she could not see the trap. She wanted to hang my grandmother's portrait like a trophy, a symbol of her ultimate conquest. My next call was not to an art mover. It was to a private security firm run by a man who owed me his entire career. I had saved his company from an embezzlement charge 5 years ago by finding the real culprit. Michael, I said, I need a favor. I have a piece of art, an oil painting in a very thick, ornate wooden frame. I need you to install a 4K, voice-activated camera and a high-fidelity microphone inside it. It needs to be battery-independent and stream directly to a secure server. He did not even ask why. You need the Trojan horse special. It will be ready in 24 hours. While Michael's team was working, I moved on to the next phase. I needed someone on the inside. I pulled up the wedding invitation. The event planner was listed at the bottom, mile-high celebrations. A quick, deep dive into their financials told me everything I needed to know. They were a successful, high-end company, but they were also a mess. Their tax filings were sloppy, and a public record search showed they were currently undergoing a comprehensive audit by the IRS. They were in a panic. I called their main line, not as Eliza Hayes, but as Ms. Hayes, a forensic accounting consultant. I understand you are currently working with the IRS, I said to the panicked owner. My specialty is crisis accounting. I clean up precisely these kinds of messes before they turn into criminal charges. I let him sweat for a moment. Here is my offer. I will clean up your books. I will handle the audit response for you, pro bono, for free. I will make your IRS problem go away before your big wedding this weekend. Why? He asked, suspicious. What is in it for you? A trade, I said. I have a culinary school graduate, top of her class, who needs experience. You will hire her for the Vance wedding, not as a waitress, but as a backup technician for your sound and lighting team. She just needs to be there, with full access, to observe. He agreed instantly. He did not care about a single extra employee if it meant saving his business. He had no idea that my culinary graduate was actually Michael's best surveillance technician. I now had eyes, ears, and boots on the ground. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for the rats to walk into it. Friday, one day before the wedding, Michael's art restoration van, a clean, white, anonymous vehicle, pulled up the long, winding driveway of my house. From a secure server in my apartment. I watched the feed from the van's dash cam. My tech, Maria, the culinary graduate, was dressed in a crisp, black polo shirt, holding a clipboard, looking every bit the part of an event staffer. We have a delivery for Ms. Croft, the Hayes portrait, Maria said into her comms, which my tech inside the van relayed to me. I watched the live feed switch to Michael's two-man team, dressed in white gloves, as they carried the enormous frame-covered painting toward the front door. Seraphina opened it herself. She was beaming. "Right in the main foyer, please," she directed, her voice dripping with the false authority of a new queen. On the main wall, above the console table, Julian appeared, a glass of whiskey in his hand, a smug grin plastered on his face. Well. Your grandmother's triumphant return," he said to Seraphina, completely ignoring the delivery crew. He wrapped an arm around her waist and kissed her temple. "It is a bold move. I will give Eliza that. It is almost like she is giving us her blessing. It is a white flag, darling, Serafina cooed. She knows she lost. I sat in my dark apartment, my face illuminated only by the screen, and watched them. I watched as Michael's team expertly mounted the portrait, their movements precise as they checked the level and secured the wiring, which was really them activating the final connection. "There you are, Grandma," I whispered. The feed went live. Crystal clear, 4K video. The microphone was so sensitive I could hear the faint clink of the ice in Julian's glass. The camera angle was perfect, high and wide, capturing the entire grand foyer and the entrances to the study and the living room. For the first hour, it was just them, walking past, admiring it, Serafina pointing out how it really tied the room together. Then, Julian's phone rang. He stepped into the foyer, right under the portrait, and lowered his voice. "Yeah, what is it?" He listened, his brow furrowing. "I do not care what they are asking for. You make the file. Disappear. Do you understand me? A clerical error, a server migration. Lose it. That audit needs to go away by Monday." My blood ran cold. He was talking to his contact at the IRS, the one who was auditing mile-high celebrations. "Just do it," Julian snapped. "Do not worry about it. After the wedding, everything moves to the new trust. Everything. This whole house. Aurelius. All of it. We are moving it offshore. No one can touch us. Least of all my crazy ex-wife." He hung up. I had it. Clear as day. Conspiracy to commit tax fraud, obstruction, admitting to hiding assets. He was arrogant, just as my mother had said. He felt so safe in my house that he was openly committing federal crimes. I saved the clip and sent it to my encrypted server. That was enough to bury him, but I kept watching. The night wore on. The event staff came and went. Maria, my woman on the inside, did a sound check and managed to get her laptop plugged into the main audio board, giving her full access to the wedding's PA system. At 2 a.m, long after Julian had presumably gone to bed, the lights in the foyer snapped on. It was Serafina. She was in a silk robe, pacing, her phone pressed to her ear. She was speaking in a low, urgent voice, but the microphone in the frame picked up every word. "Is the account open?" she whispered. "Did the wire transfer from Switzerland clear?" She was listening, nodding. "Good. Everything is ready. As soon as I say I do, the prenuptial agreement is activated. Julian just signed his financial death warrant." A cold, reptilian smile spread across her face. It was a look I had never seen on her, not even on the witness stand. This was the real Serafina. "Oh, he is so stupid," she laughed, a sound like broken glass. "He thinks this prenup protects him. He thinks it shields his assets from me. He had his lawyers drafted in English, but he let my team handle the Spanish language addendum for my family's assets in Panama. He did not even read the fine print. His translator, the one I hired for him, he works for me. The addendum does not protect his assets. It transfers them, the entire Aurelius Holdings portfolio, the shell that owns this house. It all transfers to our trust as soon as the marriage is legally filed. He just gave it all away." She listened again. "Do not worry about Julian. I will handle him. He will be a very rich, very angry, and very divorced man by this time next year. And I will have everything. Ciao." She hung up. She looked up at my grandmother's portrait, her smile fading into a look of cold, hard triumph. She ran a hand along the gilded frame. "We did it," she whispered, though it was unclear to whom she was speaking. Then she turned off the light and was gone. I sat in the dark for a full minute, my mind racing. She was not just a co-conspirator. She was a usurper. She was running a con so deep and so patient that she had made Julian's theft of my house look like petty shoplifting. I now had the evidence to destroy Julian for bribery and tax fraud, and I had the evidence of Serafina's massive international wire fraud against Julian, They had both built their houses of cards right in front of my camera, and I was about to provide the wind. My original plan was to just expose Julian, then it was to expose them both. But sitting in the dark, listening to the audio file of Serafina's treachery, I realized a simple exposure was not enough. If I went to the FBI, they would arrest Julian, but Serafina might escape, her Panama trust vanishing before the law could catch up. If I merely revealed Serafina's con to Julian, he would play the victim, the jilted groom, and use his army of lawyers to keep my house. No, they were partners in my destruction, even if they were enemies to each other. They deserved to fall together, publicly, and I had to be the one to push them. I changed the plan. My first call was not to the police. It was to the FBI. I had a contact. Agent Riley, a man I had worked with on a complex white-collar case 2 years before. He owed me. "Riley," I said, my voice all business. "Eliza Hayes, I have a gift for the Bureau, and I am wrapping it in a bow." "Ms. Hayes, good to hear from you." His voice was cautious. What kind of gift?" "A multi-million-dollar real estate fraud, bribery of a public notary, conspiracy to commit tax fraud, and a separate, ongoing international wire fraud scheme, all culminating at a wedding tomorrow." There was a heavy pause. "That is quite a gift. You have proof. I am sending you the encrypted file as we speak," I said, hitting enter. "It includes high-fidelity audio of the targets discussing their crimes. Explicitly." I let him listen. It took him less than 5 minutes. "My God," he finally said. "Vance is admitting to bribing a notary and having a man inside the IRS. And the woman. She's conning him. This is a jurisdiction nightmare. It is beautiful." "The wedding is at noon tomorrow," I said. "At the house. 1420 Golden Fields. You cannot come in with sirens. He will destroy everything. You need to be guests." "Understood," Riley said, his voice now steel. "We will have an observation team in formal wear. They will be old friends of the family. They will act on your signal." Next, the notary. I did not care about Marcus Reed in Costa Rica. I cared about his wife, Brenda, the one who took the money. I had her cell phone number from the Apex wire transfer records. I called it. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding sleepy and sun-drenched. "Brenda Reed." "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Eliza Hayes. You accepted a $150,000 bribe from Julian Vance, which he laundered through my former employer. In exchange, your husband falsified the legal documents that stole my home." The silence on the line was a confession. I heard her gasp, a strangled, terrified sound. "You have 2 options," I said, my voice as cold as a winter morning. "Option 1. You get on the next flight from Costa Rica to Denver. You have exactly 24 hours. You will go to the FBI field office and you will give a full statement, in exchange for which I have already arranged an immunity deal. Option 2. You do nothing, and I will personally see to it that both you and your husband are extradited and charged with felony wire fraud. I will bury you both." I will fly," she stammered, dissolving into panicked sobs. "I will be there. Oh, God, please." I hung up. With the legal pieces in motion, I turned to the personal. My armor. I walked to my closet and stared at the row of gray suits and beige blouses, the uniform of a victim, of the woman I used to be. I left my apartment, walked down to Cherry Creek North, and went into the most expensive boutique I could find. I put it on the one credit card I had left. It was a floor-length gown, cut from heavy silk. It was not black, or blue, or any other color of mourning. It was crimson, a deep, violent, arterial red. It was not a color for blending in. It was a color for a declaration. I called my mother. "Eleanor, it is tomorrow. I need you in the front row." I heard her smile over the phone, a sharp, satisfied sound. "Oh, darling, I booked my flight last week. I am at the Four Seasons. I would not miss this for the world. And do not worry," she added. I am bringing the good camera. I was about to turn off my phone when a new text came in. It was from Maria, my tech inside the house, the culinary graduate running the sound. Found something. Basement. Behind a false panel in the wine cellar. Julian has a full security hub. Server rack. Multiple hard drives. He is recording the whole house. Audio and video. Dozens of hidden cameras. Looks like it is always on. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Of course he did. Julian's real power was never just his legal knowledge. It was his paranoia. He recorded everything. Every meeting, every call, every conversation in his office. It was his insurance policy, his leverage, his weapon to win cases and blackmail opponents. He had just made the fatal mistake of installing his system in my house. He thought it was his greatest protection. He had no idea he was my star witness. The wedding day arrived with a kind of cinematic cruelty. The Denver sky was a perfect, piercing blue, and the air was unseasonably warm. As my car approached the gates, I saw my house, and my stomach clenched. It was beautiful. Julian and Serafina had spared no expense. Thousands of white roses, which I was sure were astronomically expensive, were draped over the balconies and lined the walkways. It was a picture of grotesque perfection. I stepped out of the car alone. I had timed my arrival for maximum effect, not late, but precisely at the moment the reception was starting, when the largest cluster of guests would be present. I wore the red dress. The effect was instantaneous. Conversations did not just stop, they shattered. A wave of silence rippled outward from the driveway as hundreds of eyes, the eyes of Denver's elite, of Julian's partners, of judges and bankers, all turned to look at me. They were expecting the broken, mousy ex-wife in a polite beige suit. They were expecting a ghost. They got a bonfire. I walked straight past the servers holding trays of champagne. I did not want a drink. I was not there to mingle. I saw them, holding court near the massive floral arch on the main terrace. Julian, impossibly handsome in a custom-tailored tuxedo, and Serafina, a vision in layers of white lace, her dark hair piled on her head, looking every bit the innocent bride. I walked right up to them. Julian saw me first, and a slow, unbearably smug smile spread across his face. He actually laughed, a low, booming sound, and opened his arms as if to embrace me. "Eliza," he said, his voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I am so glad you came." "I told Serafina, it just would not have felt complete without you." Serafina's smile was a work of art, a perfect, brilliant veneer of polite joy. Her eyes, however, were cold stones as they raked over my dress, assessing a threat. "Thank you for coming, Eliza," she said, her voice like honey laced with acid. "It is so incredibly mature of you. It shows you have truly moved on." "I would not have missed it for the world," I said. My smile was wider than hers, more genuine, and infinitely more dangerous. "You both look stunning. The house is stunning. It is all just perfect." I reached into my small, red clutch. "I even brought you a little something. Just a small wedding gift. I want you to open it after the honeymoon, when you are both alone and relaxed." I held out a small silver box tied with a white ribbon. Julian, ever the magnate, chuckled at the quaintness of it and took it from me. "Eliza, you really did not have to." "Oh, but I wanted to," I replied. He slipped the small box into his tuxedo pocket, dismissing me. He did not know that inside the box was a single, brushed metal USB drive, and engraved on that drive, in clean, simple script, was one word, evidence. I left them to their kingdom of lies and walked into the grand foyer, now packed with guests. My gaze went straight to the main wall, my grandmother's portrait. She stared out over the crowd, her painted eyes seeming to follow me with a look of stern judgment. I walked up to it, parting the crowd, and laid my palm flat against the corner of the heavy, gilded frame. "It is time, Grandma," I whispered, so low only the microphone hidden inside could hear me. Across the room, a woman in the black uniform of the event staff was adjusting a large speaker. She wore a headset and looked busy. It was Maria, my surveillance tech. She glanced up, caught my eye for a fraction of a second, and gave a short, almost imperceptible nod. The sound system was hers. I turned and walked toward the ceremonial area on the lawn. The white chairs were filling up. I scanned the crowd and found her. Front row, my mother, Eleanor Hayes. She was wearing a fabulous custom-made hat, sipping a glass of water, and looked for all the world like the rightful Queen Mother. She saw me and gave me a slow, satisfied wink, her good camera resting discreetly in her lap, and right next to her, looking perfectly at ease in their expensive civilian-cut suits, were 3 old family friends, 2 men and a woman, chatting pleasantly, Agent Riley and his team. I took my seat. The string quartet began to play. The music softened. The guests settled. Julian and Serafina stood under the massive arch of white roses, holding hands, looking at each other with practiced adoration. The officiant, a retired judge I knew for a fact Julian had bribed in a zoning case 3 years prior, smiled benevolently at the crowd. "Wow, welcome, friends and family," the judge began, his voice smooth and practiced. He spoke of love, of trust, of the sanctity of marriage. He spoke of how Julian and Serafina had found in each other a true partnership. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. I watched Julian as he stared at Serafina. He looked like a man who had just won the world. I watched Serafina as she gazed back at him, her eyes sparkling with what looked like tears of joy, but I knew was the thrill of the kill. The ceremony went on. The air grew still. My mother had her camera raised, but it was not pointed at the bride and groom. It was pointed at Julian's parents in the front row. A smart move. "And now," the judge said, "the vows." He led them through their scripted promises, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health. It was almost over. The judge smiled. "Before we proceed to the final declaration, I must ask, if there is anyone here today who knows any reason why this man and this woman should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now, or forever hold their peace." A dead, perfect silence fell over the lawn. The string quartet held their bows, poised. A bird chirped somewhere. "I do." The voice was not loud, but it was clear and sharp and full of terror. It came from the back of the aisle. Every head, including Julian's and Serafina's, swiveled. A woman was standing there, trembling, clutching a handbag. Her face was pale, and she was sweating in the mild sun. It was Brenda Reed. She had made her flight. Julian's face, which had been a mask of romantic bliss, instantly contorted into a snarl of pure rage. He did not look confused. He looked like a king whose executioner had just misfired. "Security!" he bellowed, breaking the sacred silence. "Get her out of here! Who the hell let her in? Get her out!" 2 beefy security guards in suits started to move toward her. "I do not think so. Julian," my voice, not from my mouth, but from every speaker on the lawn. It boomed, clear and cold, amplified to the heavens. The security guards froze. The guests gasped as one. Julian's head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with a new, horrifying confusion. "What is this?" Serafina whispered, her hand tightening on his arm. "This is not my doing, Eliza," Julian shouted, pointing at me. "Whatever this is, it is not about me, Julian." My amplified voice cut him off. "It is about you." And then, a new voice filled the air. A man's voice. A voice everyone there knew. It was Julian. It was not the recording from the portrait. It was the recording from his own secret, paranoid server. Maria had patched it directly from the basement hub into the main audio feed. "Look!" Julian's voice echoed across the lawn, crisp and clear. "The deal is simple, just $150,000. Your wife gets a nice, simple consulting contract. All you have to do is put your stamp on that one file, the one I gave you. Just sign and stamp it. Marcus. Nobody will ever look at it. It is just a formality." A collective, audible gasp rose from the crowd. The judge's face went white. Julian's partners stared, their mouths open. Serafina's hand dropped from Julian's arm as she took a half step away from him. Julian himself looked as though he had been shot. His face was a mask of pure, primal horror. He stared at the speaker next to the floral arch, as if he could will it to stop by staring. "She does not even have to do anything," his recorded voice continued, slick and persuasive. "It is just a non-compete. It is a favor. We are all friends here. Are you my friend? Marcus." The clip ended. The silence that followed was heavier and more damning than any accusation. That is fake," Julian roared, finally finding his voice. "That is fabricated, Eliza. You bitch, you did this." "Did I?" My voice echoed back, calm and curious. "Did I fabricate that, Julian? Or did I just access the server you keep in the wine cellar?" The sheer animal panic in Julian's eyes was the most honest thing I had ever seen from him. It's a fake," he bellowed, pointing at me, his face a mask of purple rage. Eliza did this. She is obsessed with me. She is insane." My voice, calm and amplified, washed over the chaos. "Is it as fake as Aurelius Holdings? Julian, the company you created to steal this house. Lies," he screamed. "All lies or—" My voice continued, conversational. "Is it as fake as the tax reports you ordered your IRS partner to lose? Let us listen." And then, the audio from the portrait camera, the one from last night, filled the air. Julian's own voice, sharp and conspiratorial. "I do not care what they are asking for. You make the file. Disappear. Do you understand me? A clerical error. A server migration. Lose it. That audit needs to go away by Monday." That was the signal. From the front row, Agent Riley and his 2 family friends stood up. They did not draw their guns. They were calm, professional. They simply flipped open their badges. "Julian Vance," Agent Riley said, his voice cutting cleanly through the stunned silence. "You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, bribery of a public official, and conspiracy to obstruct a federal investigation." Julian's world was visibly collapsing. The blood drained from his face. He looked at the agents, then at his partners, then at his parents, who looked like they were about to faint. His eyes darted around, looking for an escape, and they landed on the last person he thought was his ally. "Serafina," he choked out, grabbing her arm. "Honey, call our lawyer. Call them now." "Oh, she is a little busy," my voice interrupted, a note of cruel amusement in it. "And I am not sure you have the same lawyer anymore. In fact, I am not sure you have the same trust." Julian looked confused. Serafina's face had gone from shocked to a pale, waxy white. "You should probably hear this one. Julian," my voice said, "it is from last night. Pay attention." And then, the second recording played, Serafina's, her voice, low and treacherous, speaking in rapid, fluent Spanish. "Él cree que este acuerdo prenupcial lo protege." Her voice cooed, the Spanish words echoing over the horrified, mostly English-speaking crowd. "No leyó la letra pequeña. Todo Aurelius Holdings será transferido a nuestro fideicomiso en Panamá." "What? What is she saying?" Julian whispered, staring at Serafina. "She is saying," my voice translated, cold and clear, "that she thinks you are stupid. Julian, she is saying that she had you sign a prenup where the Spanish addendum, The one she had her translator check transfers all of Aurelius Holdings' my house into her new trust in Panama. She was conning you, Julian. She was going to take everything you stole and leave you with nothing. Julian turned to Serafina. The look on his face was not just anger. It was the look of a predator who just realized it was, and always had been, the prey. You. And Serafina, my voice said, a final surgical cut. Your father, Lawrence. He would be so proud to see you conned the man who ruined him, but I wonder what he would think, knowing you conned him, too. That Panama Trust. It was never for him, was it? It was always, only, for you. That was the moment they both broke. Serafina lunged, but not at me. She lunged at Julian, her nails bared, screaming, You ruined my life. You ruined it. You lying. Julian shoved her back, and that was when the agents moved in. Serafina Croft, Agent Riley's partner said, grabbing her arm. You are also under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. They were cuffed, back to back, but in separate worlds of their own private hell. The guests were silent, watching in fascinated, privileged horror. Julian looked at me, his eyes promising murder. Serafina just looked at the ground, defeated by the one person she never saw coming. My mother, Eleanor, was on her feet, her camera held high, capturing every beautiful, catastrophic second. She winked at me. I stood up from my chair. My part was done. I walked to a nearby server, took a fresh, bubbling glass of champagne from his trembling hand, and walked onto the small platform where the judge had stood. I held my glass high, the red of my dress a beacon in the sea of white and black. Thank you all for coming, I said, my real voice, unamplified, carrying in the quiet. The show is over. You can all go home now. And by the way, I added, taking a long, slow sip, this house is mine again. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am dying to know what you think. So please comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. I love to see how far these stories travel. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.